What up? What up? What up? Welcome back, guys. Welcome back. I have a special guest for us today. He's a good friend of mine. He has a great show that he hosts. He's a former combat Marine veteran. He was a former police officer. He's a patriot. Uh, he is he's one of a kind. He does great work. He does great. His shows are great. I enjoy every minute of him. His show is called the Alpha Warrior Show, um, and uh, you know, I can't. I don't want to ruin his reputation, so I have him tell you what he does and who he is. He's a great guy. Let's bring him in, guys. Let's bring him in. Alpha, my friend, how you doing?
I'm doing good, brother. How are you doing tonight?
Good, man. Hey, man, thanks for coming in. Thanks for giving the time and enjoying the show.
No,
Um,
absolutely. It's an honor to be here, man. Thanks for having me.
Dude, we're glad to have you here. Go ahead, introduce yourself, Alpha. Tell the audience what do you do and what got you started with this whole thing.
Gotcha. Long story, but I'll try to give the Cliff Notes version of
The
it.
floor is yours,
Uh,
buddy.
real name is Alfredo Luna. Kind of adopted the name of Alpha Warrior through social media, and I was like, you know what, I like it, and it stuck. So that's how that came to be. Was in the Marine Corps. Went to Iraq as part of the combat mission out there in 2003. Shortly after the Marine Corps, joined law enforcement, and I'm a 14-year veteran of the law enforcement world. Worked patrol, worked detectives, did undercover work. Ultimately, found myself working gangs on a task force, and that's kind of what I was doing before that abruptly came to an end that I wasn't prepared for. Since then, we go to January 15th of last year, where the FBI decided they wanted to pay my home a visit with flashbangs and drones and armored vehicles, and the search warrants that they obtained for me. And they showed up to take away my firearms. I live in California, and they use the California red flag laws as a way to take away my firearms. Now, just so everybody knows, prior to this moment, I had a zero criminal history. I was a decorated Marine and I was a decorated law enforcement officer. My run-ins with the law ended in 2003 when I got a coming home from Iraq. Actually, I had a tinted windows ticket, so that kind of shows you the my criminal tenure right there. That's how dangerous I lived with tinted windows. But so back to January 15th, they got a search warrant, raided my house, took me and my family out at gunpoint. At the time, I had a newborn daughter. She was 2 months old, that they didn't let us get to. They didn't let my fiance get to the baby. So during this whole commotion, she's still inside the house by herself. So you can imagine what that felt like for us as parents. Me myself being handcuffed, and watching my family, sitting on a sidewalk curb in the freezing cold, because this was, like I said, even though it's California, it still gets cold in January, and this was around a little bit before 6 in the morning. I ended up finding out that the search warrant was for my Twitter social media. So even though my tweets didn't violate Twitter's policy, the FBI said it definitely was something that was of a concern to them. And trust me, I have been suspended and I have been flagged for Twitter. And all of you pretty much know what that feels like in the sense.
Can you discuss what it was like on Twitter? Like, what was it exactly like?
Yeah, so there was 4 or 5 posts that they questioned me on. The first one was, and forgive me for, I'm not going to quote it perfectly, but I'll get it. But it had a picture of myself when I was out in Iraq. It had a picture of Mel Gibson from the movie Braveheart. There was like 2 pictures of that and a flag that said freedom. And then in the post it said, will you die with me? Or no, it said, will you fight with me for this country, or would you die for your country? Nothing violent. And for those that don't understand, you can die for your country without ever throwing a freaking rock. Ask Tank Man, and follow the story of Tank Man in China, and you'll learn. And aside from that, I mean, that's a statement I think any patriotic American would make. I mean, we should all love our country enough that we would sacrifice our life for it.
Right.
Nonetheless, this was the main one they focused on.
I mean, you were in the military, for God's sake, right?
100%. Come on. Another post they questioned me on was a tweet that I put. It said January 19th. And so like, well, what are you planning on doing on January 19th? Like, I don't plan on doing anything but working on January 19th. They're like, what does it mean? And at the time, that was, a lot of us that were kind of following some of the boards and the coding stuff out there. We felt that that was the day that Trump was going to drop a lot of the evidence to the election fraud. So I explained that to them. Nonetheless, essentially what they did was they tried to take everything out of context to portray a picture out there. But here's the thing that everybody needs to understand. Remember what I said I did in law enforcement. I worked detectives, I did undercover, and I worked gangs. Well, one of the things I also did was I was an expert in search warrants. A lot of the homicides that we investigated and every single crime that had to do with gangs, 99% of those came to me for search warrants. I even went to classes specifically training on search warrants. So the whole time that they're doing this, and I'm asking for the search warrants, I'm asking for an attorney, which didn't matter to them. I'm thinking, how in the hell did they get us? What did they use to get probable cause? I'm a good guy. Like, unless they outright lied, how did they get probable cause to get a judge to say they can come raid my home? So what they ended up writing in the search warrant, to this day, we haven't been able to get a full copy of the search warrant. They won't release it. But from the parts that they have released, and most of it's, the local media was able to get it, and we were able to get it through them. But what they said was because I was a former combat Marine and because I was a former law enforcement officer, that I was fully capable of inflicting violence. So remember, 0 criminal history, 0 arrests, never even been detained in my life. But yet, because of my military background and my law enforcement background, and because I was against, the incoming administration of what they were going to do, they decided that was enough to pose me as a domestic terrorist.
Wow.
So on top of this, and this is something that should scare everybody when they hear it, because, I'm one person, but if they can do it to me, they can do it to anybody. We've seen the movie Minority Reporter. Some of you may have seen it with Tom. It's Tom Cruise, and it's all about, thought crime. One of the things they wrote in the search warrant, and when I read this, I was like, what are you shitting me right now? But what it said was, I showed pre-incident indicators of violence for Inauguration Day. So let me tell you guys, like I said, I worked law enforcement. I wrote a lot of warrants. If we can go and get search warrants and arrest warrants on people because they show pre-incident indicators to commit crime, I'll tell you right now, I can end crime in the entire United States in a weekend.
It's like a Minority Report, dude.
100%. That's not, you don't arrest people before people do things. You can do surveillance on them. You can monitor them. You can do all that, but you don't violate people's, constitutional rights, specifically the 4th Amendment on pre-crime. That goes against the very fabric of our Constitution. But nonetheless, they did it. So here was the other part. So once they explained that they felt that I was a threat to the inauguration. Now, remember, I'm in California. Inaugurations in Washington. For those that aren't familiar with the way the United States looks, I'm way over here, and inauguration's way over there.
2,863 miles difference.
So 100%. So one of the other things, like I said, that they did in there was that I asked them, how did you get a judge? So, so people that don't understand the way law enforcement works, when we get a search warrant done, we write it. Some agencies, you'll go meet with the district attorney before you go to the judge. Ours is one of those. And then after that, you go see the judge. When you go before the judge, you raise your right hand, you take an oath, even though there's no one else around but you and the judge. This is how important it is. I mean, essentially, you're asking a judge for permission to go and violate someone's constitutional rights. It's a very important situation. So because of that, you take an oath. And during that oath, one of the things the judge asks you is everything in this document true and accurate to the best of your knowledge? And your answer is going to be yes. And that's what's going to lead the judge to believe that what's in front of him is the best and most information that you have, so he can make that decision to approve it or disapprove it. So when I saw that they said that I was a threat to the inauguration, I asked them. Remember, this is January 15th. They had the search warrant signed on January 13th. On January 11th, I had posted on my Twitter. There was and some of you may remember this, but there was a post going around telling people to take up arms and go to their state capitals or to go to the national capital. It was a post. No one was taking ownership for it, but it was circulating all of social media. It had like a big red banner on it. Well, none of us patriots are stupid. So we instantly smelt BLM Antifa. They're trying to get more people in trouble, especially in wake of January 6th. So I retweeted that. And I specifically said in the tweet, which still stands to this day, do not go. This is a trap by BLM and Antifa. So now we go, come back to January 15th, and I'm asking the FBI investigator and the task force officer, how did you guys get a judge to sign a warrant that I'm a threat to the inauguration, that I intend to disrupt it? But literally 2-3 days ago, I posted telling people not to do that. And they should have lied, but for a brief second, they were honest. And they're like, yeah, we saw that. So remember, they acknowledged seeing it. It's audio recorded. There's evidence they saw it. But this was the FBI's response. He says, well, but the reason you told them not to go is because it's BLM and Antifa. I said, it doesn't matter what the reason is. I could have told them don't go. It's because, the Smurfs are planning it. The whole point is you're telling a judge that I'm telling people to do it, but yet you saw evidence of me telling people not to do it. So right then and there, I knew without a shadow of a doubt, and this is probably one of the reasons they haven't released the full warrant to us yet, that they didn't include that tweet inside the search warrant. Because even a fairly new judge would have saw that and said, hey, this is the allegations you're making, but this evidence shows to the different. Can you explain? And they wouldn't be able to, and the judge would have denied the warrant. So like I said, there's case law and some stuff where they messed up by withholding information that could have exonerated me, or at least exonerated me from getting the search warrant, and we'll fight that battle. But nonetheless, they got a California gun violence protective order, and that's how they removed all my firearms, which I'm still going to court on in February the 9th. I go to defend myself to get back my Second Amendment rights. 5 days later, on Inauguration Day, I'm working for the Palm Springs Unified School District as one of their officers in their gang liaison. And I find out from a buddy who used to work law enforcement so he recognizes law enforcement, their tactics. He says, hey man, there's some undercover cars that are surrounding, the school. And I keep seeing Palm Springs Police Department driving by. So I'm not stupid. I knew what this meant. You don't have undercover units. You don't have a, perimeter set up like that unless you plan on making an arrest. So I called up my boss and said, hey, I don't want to embarrass the school district, by having them, put someone on a camera, with the school district uniform on or anything like that. That the school's better than that. I go, so I'm going to go home. I'm going to change, give my bank card to my wife, let her know what's going on. Let her know that all those phone numbers that I had set for her, this is the time to start making those calls. Did that, ended up meeting with the police department and the FBI officers. And the Palm Springs guy goes, do you know what this is about? So I'm like, yeah, this is about my social media. They, hit me up a few days ago about it. And he's like, no, it's for an assault rifle. And I'm all, my work rifle, the one from when I was a police officer. And he's just like, well, I can't say any more than that. So obviously I'm not going to say any more than that as well. But they ended up arresting me for the rifle that I had when I was a police officer. That I'll leave it at that because that's still an ongoing criminal charge that we have to deal with. But just so people understand, the arrest was for the rifle, wasn't for social media. Social media is just how they got, I guess you could say, the ball rolling. So the other part of it was I've arrested dozens, hundreds of people for weapons violations. Usually that bail amounts around $30,000, $35,000, and you'll pay 10% of that. So I knew the bail would be around that amount. But the other thing I knew is this is California, you guys. In California, our correctional system isn't in the best condition, and it's overloaded. So unless you're arrested for a violent offense, usually you get to the jail, they book you, and then they release you with an OR date. So you don't really have to worry about bail. So I had that kind of thing in my mind. Well, this is just a weapons event. I should get Fed kicked once I get to county and et cetera. So I asked the FBI agent, I go, hey, what's the bail? His response was $250,000.
What?
So I go, what are all the charges?
That's for felony, dude.
So I asked him, what are all the charges? Because I'm like, you have to have the charges stacked for this. Because like I said, Penal Code 3605, the assault weapon charge, like I said, it should be about a $35,000 charge. So I'm like, they have to have multiple charges on here to be $250,000. He said, no, it's just the only charge. So when he said that, instantly in my mind, I said, okay, that means they did a bail enhancement. So a bail enhancement is designed for situations where the person you're arresting is an immediate threat to either society or a specific victim. Like, let's just say you had a really bad domestic violence or something like that, or a victim, that's near death in the hospital ICU. Those are kind of the situations that's outlined for. Well, to this day, we have not been given permission to see the bail enhancement form that they did. So to this day, I don't know what they wrote to get that form, but whatever they wrote, it must have been very bad. Because like I said, a judge approved it, $250,000. So nonetheless, I'm on the way to county. And, this part, I'm going to give credit to the young transport officer that works for Palm Springs PD. As we're driving, he pulls into a lot and he comes over to my door, because when they put me in the paddy wagon, I'm in the very back of it and I'm in a thing the size of like a Foot Locker, and I'm not a small guy. So, it was very uncomfortable. Well, he opens the door and I'm looking around because I don't see anybody. And he's just like, go ahead and step out. So I'm like, oh, hold on. I'm like, I've seen enough movies to know where this is going. I'm going to step out. You guys are going to say I try to escape or something. I'm going to get one in the dome. I'm like, and he's like, no, man. He's like, I know who you are. Like, I know your reputation from the other officers. And they told me you don't deserve to be treated like this. He goes, so I'm going to go ahead and, double cuff you. So put 2 handcuffs on. I'll put them on your lap and then I'm going to move you to the front, so you can be a little more comfortable. And let me tell you guys, that bit of compassion probably is one of the main things that particular night that helped me get through. Because you want to talk about feeling betrayed. I was feeling it, every ounce of betrayal is what was going through my mind. So to see that there was some compassion, to see that the other guys that I had worked with before had told them about who I was, and it meant something to them, that meant something to me. So I got to sit, right behind where he was driving, and we talked a little bit on the way there, and he was interested in being in law enforcement. So I told him, I go, it's, one of the best careers you can ever have. And we had a good conversation. So we get to county and I'm thinking, okay, I know it's $250,000, but nonetheless, this is still a nonviolent offense. So I should still get Fed kicked. So when I get there, I asked the booking sergeant, and just so everybody knows, because I was a law enforcement officer, when I get to the county, they got to shut down the entire intake, and they do it for my safety, because when you go in there as law enforcement, you are target number one. If anybody can hurt you or kill you, they are going to be treated like royalty for the rest of their stay in that institution. So you really have to, have your head on a swivel and eyes behind your head if you want to live. So when I get there, they shut down the entire intake. They bring me in. I ask the booking sergeant, the watch commander. I go, hey, assuming you guys are going to Fed kit me, it's, just the one charge. And he's like, yeah, hold on. We're trying to figure something out. Well, when I see them bring out the county jumpsuit, I'm like, okay, they're not Fed kicking me because I've been in here before and I know how the process works. Well, come to find out, they transport me to where I was going to be housed. And I'll tell you guys a little bit about that. But what was unbeknownst to me at the time was my wife, my mom, my family, my friends were already working on trying to bail me out. They had got in contact with my attorney. My attorney was on the phone with the bail agent. And the bail agent had already called them back and said, we can't bail them out. So my family's like, what do you mean we can't bail them out? And they're like, there's a parole hold on them. So for people that don't know what that is, to get a parole hold, this is the chain of events that needs to happen. You need to commit a crime. You need to get arrested for that crime. You need to go through the entire court process, get convicted of that crime, get sentenced, get sent to prison, do a portion of your prison sentence, and then get released out on parole. And then while you're released out on parole, you violate parole, which then leads to a parole hold. Now, remember, the only thing I ever had was a tinted windows ticket back in 2003. So my family's like, how the hell? Even my attorney, like, where's the parole hold? Well, this is where you start to see, quote unquote, conspiracy theories, tinfoil hat stuff. What we came to find out was there was a clerical error that had took place putting a parole hold on me. Well, what that parole hold did for the 6 or 7 hours that it lasted was it made me ineligible to be Fed kicked. So what that created was the only way that I was going to be able to leave the county jail that week was if my family came up with the bail for $250,000. So, and they, remember, this is the FBI. They know my bank accounts. They know my phone records. They know all the locations I've been. They know we don't have that kind of money. So this was their attempt to keep me in there. So now being back to the booking process, it was a jail I was very familiar with, Larry D. Smith Correctional Facility out in Banning, California. Um, I've been in this particular part of the jail to go and interview, inmates. So as we're walking, I'm like, we make a turn and it's a direction I'd never been before. So I'm like, this is weird. Like we've never been this way. Well, not only did I get booked, not only was there a parole hold, not only was there a $250,000 bail, but I was going to be put into isolation. So I was actually put in the hole. Remember, the entire time they were respectful to me, I was respectful to them. But for whatever reason, the orders were to put me in the hole. So I was in a jail cell for about a day and a half. That's 8 feet wide, 11 feet long. Has 3 concrete walls, and there's no one around you. There's a particular hallway that leads straight to you. So for someone who's used to freedom, someone who doesn't have a criminal history, let me tell you, it is a terrifying experience. It is, if you don't have at least some strength to your faith and your soul and your mental wealth or your mental wellness, this is what will make people go crazy. And the reason I want to focus, on describing that is because I want people to understand there are still January 6th inmates right now that are in that type of environment, and they've been there since January, February. There's people that have been there for almost a year. I'm telling you, I spent a day and a half in that type of environment, and we talked a little bit before the camera. I would rather go back to Iraq and go through what I went through in combat 10 times before I ever want to go through that experience again. It's that horrible. But I got in there, got on my knees. I prayed. I knew my family was probably worried. And like I said, the following day, they were able to finally bail me out. And we've been in the fight ever since. So now I'll rewind to where the Alpha Warrior Show came to be. So when we go back to January 15th, before they made the arrest, the day that they served the search warrant, right before the FBI left, one of the things that the agent said, he goes, "This is your chance to take the off ramp." And he could tell I was looked puzzled. And he said, "Listen, just stop posting what you're posting. And I think you're a good guy and you'll get past this." So what that translates into is, do not say that your government is becoming tyrannical. Do not say that the government's trying to take your firearms. Do not say that the government's trying to suppress your First Amendment speech, and you'll be left alone. Now, this part, as terrible as it is, it's probably going to make you guys laugh. During the course of that initial interview, they told me, remember, I'm the one that's supposed to be the crazy guy. And they said, "You're posting that the government's trying to take your guns and suppress your speech." Now, everybody think about that shit for a second. They're there to investigate me because I'm an upset American patriot that the government's trying to take my firearms and suppress my speech. And literally that day, they took away my guns and were investigating me for my speech. But I'm the crazy person. So literally what I was telling everybody the government's going to do, they were actually doing it. And then I'm the crazy person because I was trying to bring it to people's attention. Wow. So when they ultimately ended up leaving, it was actually my son's birthday. That was the day he turned 13. So that's all he'll remember, his 13th birthday for the rest of his life. But once I got past, just being crushed, being stressed out, worrying about what's going on and thinking about what they said, hey, don't go against the grain and you'll be fine. Well, I'm a combat Marine, I'm a United States patriot. I'm an American citizen. That's not how I'm built. That's, my rights are given to me by God, not by man, not by a government. And I wasn't going to be quiet. I said, you know what? I'm going to be even louder. I'm going to make my voice reach even farther. So once I, got the go ahead from my attorneys, I said, okay, now I'm going to go public about everything that's going on. And, that's when I said, I'm going to do a show. I'm going to do a show. I'm going to be a voice for the January 6th people. I'm going to be a voice for America. I'm going to be a voice for, patriots across the globe, because this isn't just happening to us as Americans. We see what's happening to our brothers and sisters to the north. We see what's happening to our brothers and sisters across the globe. People can make whatever assumptions they want, but if you do your own research and you look at what's going on globally, there is a mass attack on freedom. There's a mass attack on liberties. One of the doctors just came out and said a few weeks ago, mass psychosis, and we're seeing it firsthand. If you can institute enough fear in people, you will get those people that are afraid to buy off on anything you want to do, which includes persecuting their fellow citizens. And the only way we defeat that is by doing what you're doing right now, brother. Taking the knowledge you have, the experience you have, just the fortitude to push forward and have a show, to bring information into the light, and that's where we're here, and that's how I'm here. It's just get this word out to people, wake up other patriots, and truth is what's going to win. Now, there's this. We're in a war. It's not a conventional war. There's not tanks and planes and guns. Not the wars that we went to, the ones we experienced.
No, this is the Cold War.
Yeah, this is an unconventional war, and it's a war of information. We're up against propaganda right now, and the only way you defeat propaganda is with the truth. But the other side of war that people have to understand: when me and you signed up for our military, we signed up so we would go and fight foreign lands, so that our kids, our grandparents, our parents wouldn't ever have to see the stuff we saw. That's why we went to foreign lands to fight. Unfortunately, that fight has found its way in our country because of the type of fight it is, which means people that normally wouldn't be, veterans or military people, they're still in a position where people are gonna have to realize, I need to fight. I'm a part of this fight. Even though I didn't choose it, I'm a part of it. And it's information. It's talking to your coworkers. It's not being afraid to be fired. It's not being afraid to lose relationships. It's recognizing that there is going to be losses. People like myself, we're going to be casualties of war. Our lives are going to be turned upside down. They're going to be destroyed. We're going to be thrown in jails. We're going to be transferred to gulags. That's what's going to happen. As unfortunate as it is, it's going to happen. So the only thing that I can do, the only thing that you can do, is to make sure we get as much information out to other people. So when it does happen to us and we are removed from the scene to be able to make a difference, there's other people that can pick up that torch and say, it's my turn. Now I'm in the fight. And that's where we're at right now, brother. At least that's how I feel.
No, I mean, dude, that's a traumatizing scenario for anybody. But I have to ask you this question. Has it ever crossed your mind that there could have been somebody in the background that was feeding FBI false information because they just either didn't like you or they had some grudge against you or anything? Could that be the possibility? Because why would they pick somebody like you because of a tweet that doesn't make sense? Because it's not just you who wrote that tweet. Thousands of people wrote it.
So I ask that question to myself multiple times a day, every single day. There's two theories that I have, and these are theories just based on my experience and what I know, nothing that I can prove. The only thing I do know is there is an informant that's involved. And the reason I know that is in the warrant, there's a part that's sealed. Well, there's only two times that you seal a warrant. You seal it when there's a larger investigation going on and you don't want elements of that investigation to be released, or you're trying to protect an asset, whether it be an undercover agent, whether it be a citizen informant, whatever the case may be, you're trying to protect an asset. Those are usually the only two times that are common where you're going to seal a warrant. Like I said, my warrant's sealed because we still haven't seen it. So I know something like that's there. So one of the things that I think it could be as a result of the department, because I was in litigation with my department that fired me. And the reason they fired me, because trust me, you can go and do a Google search, pull up my name, and they will paint the picture that, I'm the worst cop that ever existed. And for those that have ever worked in law enforcement and know, this is what I'll say. And it's not in an attempt to brag, but it's just an attempt for those to figure, okay, something's going on here. 6 months before I was fired, I was investigator of the year. The year before that, I was police officer of the year. I've received the Law Enforcement Medal of Valor. I've received multiple chief's commendations. I have an award from the FBI signed by James Comey. Not that I'm proud of who it's signed by, but nonetheless, I have an award from the FBI. I have an award from Congress. I have an award from the Senate. I had a very, very exciting career. However, there was a change of leadership that we had in late 2017 going into 2018 with the new chief. And that new chief had wanted me to write a warrant that was on the verge of being illegal, definitely unethical. And I voiced my opposition to that. And I was ordered to write it. So I said, okay, I'm going to write a warrant, but I'm going to write it as the facts laid it out. Long story short, it was the only warrant in my entire career that was ever denied by the district attorney's office, and rightfully so. Well, this chief, thinking that I was going to write it in the context that he wanted me to, had went and had all the homes surrounded for these gang members. Those three gang members. So for those people that think, oh, cops are bad, they just want to arrest anybody. No, I was literally doing the right thing, even though it involved guys that, in my opinion, I'll be honest, were shitbags. I wasn't protecting good people.
Right.
But nonetheless, bad guy or not, they're still entitled to the same constitutional protections that all of us are. Well, once he realized the warrant was the warrant was denied and he had everything surrounded, the chief kind of had mud in the face. And who was to blame? Detective Luna. So that was the beginning of the end for me. Once he became the chief, in the span of 4 months, he wrote me up 3 times, and ultimately that led to my termination. We went to arbitration. We won arbitration in 2019. It was overturned by a judge, every single account. The judge actually went, pointed out the people that should have been investigated for some of the things he was throwing out there. But unfortunately, our department, we don't have binding arbitration. So we still had to go to the writs appeals process. Well, we ended up going to the writs appeals process. The only part, and so let me tell you guys, everybody I've ever spoken with in law enforcement, they're like, dude, you have the easiest case to win. And it's the reason we won an arbitration. When it gets to the state appeals writs court, which was about 3 months ago, the appeals judge did not want to hear anything that the prior judge said, literally shut down everything the attorney said. And you could tell that the guy was following his marching orders. And once again, I can make an assumption that probably has to do something with the three letter agency that kind of gave him his marching orders. But there's 2 ways you can look at it. I can look at it in a way, oh, woe is me, or I can look at it in a way, it sucks what has happened to me. It sucks to see what my family is going through financially. I mean, we are struggling. But at the same time, if these things hadn't taken place, my show wouldn't exist. The people that I've helped to motivate to do shows, theirs probably wouldn't exist. The emails that I've gotten from people that are like, hey, I showed this to my husband and, it convinced them not to take the vaccination. That's a life saved in my eyes and my beliefs. None of that would have happened if this terribleness wouldn't have been, brought upon me. So as much as it sucks, I love this country. I love this world. I love my God. And if this is the trials and tribulations I have to go through, to put me in the position to do what I'm doing, then, I'll take it on the chin and I'll do my work with honor because I trust God. And I know as long as we do our part, we win.
Yeah, absolutely, man. All right, guys, before we move forward with the show, do me a favor, hit like, hit share, and hit subscribe to the channel. And do me a favor, I want you to go on Alpha's page, which is called The Alpha Warrior Show on Rumble. Go ahead and subscribe to his channel. And go to his website, TheAlphaWarriorShow.tv. If you can help him out, go ahead and help him out, guys. He has a ton of information. He has a ton of videos in there. And lastly, don't forget to go to Immigrant Corner, realimmigrantcorner.com. Check out our merchandise. Sign up to the email so we could shoot you guys some information when we get updates, when we get new guests and all that stuff. So go ahead and do that right now. And let's get back to the show. Alpha, look, man, that's tragic, dude. That is absolutely. I mean, the January 6 people who are still locked up without a cause, and what they're doing to you, they don't have legitimate. I don't believe they have legitimate cause to do what they're doing. But there's a saying in Farsi saying that God's stick doesn't make a sound. So it's basically karma is a bitch. It's just a nicer way of saying it, right? So, um, so I truly believe that that you're gonna come out of this as a winner. I don't think they have anything to charge you with. It's unfortunate that you and your family have to go through this. This is not right for somebody that actually put their life online, serving the military, serving as a police officer, as a detective. You work the gang unit. I mean, these are all like dangerous jobs. These are all dangerous jobs.
One of
So
the things,
it's not something that, you're not working at Walmart, you're not working at, a grocery store, you're not working in an office building. You're actually on the street. You're out in the desert. You're taking shots, and it's terrible. And and for see, what bothers me is this, is that FBI is working to complete a quota of some sort, that, you know they think they're doing something right, but in reality they are completely ruining their own name and reputation.
let me add something to that real quick. So when this was all going on, because I want people to understand, I am pro law enforcement. I back the badge. I back the thin blue line. You know, when people say, "Oh, it's terrible what law enforcement did to you," I try to remind people, law enforcement didn't do it to me. There was a select few people who tarnish law enforcement. They tarnish what the oath represents. But law enforcement as a whole still are ultimately good people. Now, that can be a whole nother conversation in the direction that's going, and these men and women are going to have to make a choice pretty soon on where they're going to stand, because they're on the precipice of people being enough's enough. You know, the excuse of I'm doing my job, that's expired. That doesn't work anymore. But one of the things I wanted to say so people can understand, well, how can you still say that, Alpha? When they served the search warrant on my house, and like I said, I've been part of a tactical team where we've served high risk warrants. You work from the front of the house and you make your way back, so from the sidewalk all the way back, unless there's something very specific that you're looking for and you address that first. But even once you get there, once again, you come back from the front of the house and you work your way to the rear. So in my situation, it's, if you're facing my house, it's the driveway, which had my truck, it's the garage, then it's the front door, and the first room of the house is my son's room and the living room. Well, my truck looked like a freaking tornado hit it. And like I said, I'm a veteran. The way we are. I could tell by looking at your office. We're neat and tidy. We know where everything is. The pencils
Right.
moved. We know. Well, I'm still like that. So my truck is immaculate, and it was destroyed. It looked like a tweaker truck. My garage destroyed. My son's room turned upside down, looked like a hurricane. Well, then after that, you get into the hallway that leads you to the other bedrooms, including my master bedroom, where all my guns were, stored. Well, before you get to the master bedroom, you have my stepdaughter's room, and in that hallway was all my awards, all my certificates, a lot of the stuff that I was talking about earlier on that wall. Well, when I found out after the fact, my stepdaughter told me that when they got to the hallway, she's sitting in the room. There's an officer that's babysitting her, and they stop at that wall, and they're looking at all my accolades and awards. And one guy, she refers to him as the bald guy. And from what I remember, he looked like he was the team leader. One of the guys asked the bald guy, "Hey, are we arresting this guy?" And the team leader looks at him and he goes, "No, I actually think this is a good guy." Now, remember the way I described my garage, my truck, and my son's room look. My daughter's room, treated with respect. My bedroom, the bedroom that had all the guns that they were looking for, treated with respect. It looked like two different search teams hit my house. And so, for those that don't understand what I'm trying to say, this is the point I'm trying to make. These operators were given information from the lead detective, FBI agent, FBI Armendez, and Detective Candace. Whatever information they were given in that briefing, because I've been in those briefings, led these guys to believe that I probably was some dangerous, crazy Marine veteran, some deranged, crazy cop, that got fired for all this bad stuff. Whatever picture they painted led these guys to think that they were going into a very dangerous situation. When I opened my door, I didn't tell everybody this part. When I opened my door, there was about a dozen red dots that were pointed at me. So you can imagine what that feels like. But the rest of my house was treated with respect. So what it looks like, and this is me making an assumption based off what my stepdaughter heard him say, and based on the evidence that was left behind by treating the rest of my home with respect, was once they realized, hey, you know what, there's more to the story that we've been told. This guy isn't what they've been portraying him as, because he's been respectful to us the entire time. The way they treated my family and my home changed with respect to the actual SWAT team operators. So what that tells me is there's a difference of what's going on within our FBI and with our different agencies across the country. You have your rank and file guys that still mean well, but they're going to work off the information that they're given. The problem is our corruption is seated in the leadership. It's seated in the people that are making these command decisions. It's seated in the people that are going before judges and getting these search warrants. That's where your corruption is. The part that's unfortunate is the good guys are the ones that are dealing with the consequences of that corruption. And once again, that's why these shows are important, because this is how they're going to realize, hey, there's more to what's going on, and I need to start looking at the orders I'm being given. It's a shitty situation for them, but nonetheless, they're going to have to make a decision on how they're going to handle it.
Yeah, yeah, man. I mean, we have a comment from Esdras, and yeah, I have seen Yori's speech and, like, diagrams, and how he describes this whole premise of how it works, how the system works, where you start to manipulate the system against the people. And this is mainly because of so what they're talking about is when dictatorship and socialism was starting to take place. And the huge factor of this thing is propaganda. I've been saying this for years. I've been saying it for years, specifically recently when I started my show and I started doing the show. It was telling people, like, when I lived in Iran, propaganda was key. And what I'm looking at now in the past 2 years, that's all you've been seeing, right? So it all started with the Russia Gate. How do you get it to stick, right? Propaganda. You get the media, you get the radio hosts, you get the Hollywood staff, you get everybody on in line to say the same thing 1,000 times over and over and over again. That's propaganda, right? So when you repeat something 1,000 times, you start believing in it. You don't need to have evidence. You don't need to show proof. You don't need to show proof, right? Just because 17 people repeat the same thing, it becomes fact. That's it. You don't have to show anything behind it anymore. Just because 17 known people repeat the same thing, it becomes fact. And that's how they fact check. So if you, like, Facebook fact checks material with an article, with a newspaper article. That's how they fact check anything. They don't give you a source of where the information came from. They give you an article that was an opinion piece, right? So that's how they do it. They don't have to give you the actual proof. So, and Alpha pointed out it as well. It's propaganda. It's propaganda how it's driving the narrative of what's happening in this country and how it's being torn apart. And once you have the propaganda placed in line, then division kicks in. And for those people, if you don't remember history, this is how Hitler functioned. Hitler functioned with propaganda first. Basically, get the mind and the heart of the people. Then what you do is you get the people to create the chaos. Basically, turn neighbor against neighbor, turn friend against friend, turn family against family. He directed the neighbors, the families, the friends to snitch on their own families, their friends, and their neighbor. Basically, if they saw any Jewish family in an apartment building, if they're hiding or anything like that, you need to report it to authorities. Why am I saying this? It's because the same thing happened with the vaccines. When the vaccine mandates kicked in, this was happening. Neighbors were turning in neighbors, family members were snitching on family members. When January 6th happened, they did the exact same thing where kids were turning in their own parents because their parents attended the January 6th rally. Not stepping into the Capitol, they were just at the rally and they were turning in their parents. They were turning in their best friends. They're turning in their cousins. So this is exactly what's happening now. We are seeing it in real life. We are seeing Nazism in real life. That I mean, prove me wrong. Actually, you know what? Let me get 17 people to repeat the same thing, and that'll be my fact. Before fact checkers kick in, right? So, but man, I mean, Alpha, that is unfortunate, man. The only thing I could say is I apologize. I'm sorry for what's happening to you and your family. I wish I could help in any way possible. But for the audience, please go to his page. Please donate to him. Help him out as much as you can. Visit his show. You know, this is one way we could help each other out. Is uh, uh, share our material, comment on our material, subscribe to our channel. This way we could actually grow the channel. We could give you guys more stories and more information. And life experience is very hard to detail out on some of the stuff, because not everybody's going to come on and tell you about their life experience. A lot of people like to be private. They don't want to speak about it. um and with all the craziness that's going on now, it's ridiculous, right? So um like what's going on with us, like in our county. I'm sure you heard of Loudoun County, right?
Yes, I
The
have.
Loudoun County school stuff.
Yes, I
So I
have.
live in Loudoun County. We are ground zero. And I actually went to a school board meeting yesterday because of the mask mandates on our children. And my kid yesterday went to school, and he was intimidated by a teacher because he didn't want to put his mask on. So so you know as bad as Alpha's situation is now, it's getting worse. It's getting worse. People are being targeted because of what they believe in, right? Because of what they want to believe in. Like, there's no longer freedom of choice. It's it's like basically right now it's turning into freedom of force, right? You have the freedom to force everybody to believe you and me, and there's no longer a choice for somebody to say, no, I don't want to believe you, dude. I mean, I don't want to see eye to eye with you. I don't care. It's whatever. There's no longer of that. So, and the this is tough, man. This is tough. I honestly wish people can open up their eyes and realize how this propaganda regime it's so well oiled. It's so well oiled, and they have succeeded. Like, I'm not debating the fact that they have not succeeded. They have succeeded. Like, we are seeing it now. They are so organized, and when it comes down to conservatives, we're not organized. We're all over the place. That's the problem. We don't have the unity.
One of the biggest questions that I get is, well, then what do we do? And I tell people, it's a lot simpler than you think. One of the first things that you need to do, that we need to do, is united noncompliance. Just say no. You go into a store and they tell you, you can't be in here, you got to wear a mask. You tell them, I'm not wearing a mask. I have freedom. Well, then you can't shop here. Okay. You turn around and you walk out and you take your money with you. And other people are going to see you do that. And it's probably going to motivate them to do it. And guess what? Us as Americans, we have to be prepared for inconvenience. You may have to drive outside of your city to a neighboring city to finally find a store that's going to let you shop free. And when you find that store, guess what you do now? You blast that store to everybody you know. Hey, here they support freedom. And you make them get the positive money from Patriots and you make them feel it. So the first thing is united noncompliance. Don't wear that damn mask. The second thing is informed consent. If people want to take an experimental vaccination, we at this point have done everything we can to tell them what's out there, but no one can force you and no one can force your kids to do it. And I hear people, trust me, I have people that I love and care about very much, friends, people I communicate on Twitter spaces with all the time, well, if I don't do it, I'm going to lose my job. So this is what I tell them, then lose your job. And well, I never once has the words easy have ever came out of my mouth. I said the concept is easy. What I'm asking you to do is not. It's not going to be easy to go and find something else to do, but you got to do it. You have to be prepared to lose money. If you're not prepared to make these sacrifices, let me give everybody a clue on how this plays out according to them. You either sacrifice now or it's going to get taken from you later anyways. Do you honestly think that because you go along with the program, you follow the rules, that when it's all said and done, that the elite at the top are going to turn around and say, you know what, You followed along with this. You did everything you want. Here, you're going to get everything that we have. No, that's not, if that's what their plans were, they wouldn't play this out the way it is going right now. So united non-compliance is the first thing. The second thing, spread the information. Get the information to everybody. And I'm not talking about going and telling the people that are going to agree with you. That's easy. No, get in the awkward conversations with the people that are going to probably look at you funny, probably give you the eye. Those are the people you need to talk to. And you don't have to be aggressive about it. You could tell them, listen, I have some information that's a little different than the way you see it, and I'd like to share it with you. Maybe you can prove me wrong. And then they're going to listen because maybe they want to prove you wrong. And guess what? They're going to hear what you have to say. Here's the other thing on social media. We go on Twitter, we go on spaces, and it's great to go on these spaces where, we have a like mindset, people that think like us. It's great for sharing information. But if that's where it ends, it's a waste of time. What you need to do is take that information and go into these other rooms. And the rooms I'm talking about are the ones that say BLM, the ones that say, I love Biden, the ones that say pro-vaccination. Those are the rooms you're going to go into. And guess what? 99% of the time, you're going to get treated like shit. You're going to get disrespected. You're going to get muted, and you're probably going to get kicked out of the room. It doesn't matter. For however brief you have a chance to talk, or when you finally get a chance to talk, someone's going to hear. And I can tell you guys from experience, I have left these rooms after being kicked out and had people send me messages in the DM saying, hey, sorry you were treated that way. Can you give me a little bit more information on what you were talking about? Guess what? That's a win. It doesn't matter if the room had 100 people that completely disrespected you. If you made that information available to one person, that's a win. So that's the next thing. Share the information. And then on top of that, you guys, is prayer. Don't lose your faith. What we're seeing right now, and I agree with you, brother, they are winning on some of the fronts, but they haven't won the war. They're winning the battles, but they haven't won the war. It's unfortunate for those of us that recognize what's going on. It's unfortunate for us that are, so-called red pilled or awake, because we have to hold our ground until the rest of society becomes awake, which means we're going to be persecuted in that process. Well, guess what? Nothing worth getting has ever came easy. So take it with honor. Take your sacrifice with honor. Take your ridicule with honor. Because guess what? We're patriots. It doesn't matter what country you're from. This applies to you. Be a patriot. And then the other thing I want to make note of, I'm rambling, I don't want to lose my thought because it's an important one, is don't fall for the plan that they have. And what I mean by this is I've gone in a lot of rooms. Sometimes I wonder if they're FBI agents because we know they're doing that. But you get these guys that are like, we need to get our guns and we need to go do this and do that. And they are just on the threshold to violence is going to solve the answer. Let me tell everybody right now that's listening, at this point where we're at, violence is not going to solve anything. What it's going to do is play into exactly what they want. They want to see violence because the second they see outbursts of violence, guess what they get to do? Now they get to articulate to their base, look, we have every reason to go start enforcing red flag laws. We have every reason to go start taking guns. Because look at these people are out of control. The opposite is actually what works. So some of you that, I'm pretty sure you saw it, brother, but for those that didn't, a few months ago, there was a protest that took place in New York. And on that protest, I was crossing one of the big, great bridges of New York, was MAGA and BLM together. Guess what? That shit was not on mainstream media. Once they realized what was going on, those helicopter cameras turned off. The biggest thing a tyrannical government is afraid of is unity. We're not going to agree with the people on the other side of the political aisle with us when it comes to pro-life, pro-choice issues. We're not going to agree. We're not going to agree when it comes to international and foreign spending and what goes to wars. We're not going to agree on those things. A lot of the fundamental things that separate us in the political aisles, we're not going to agree on. But we have to look past that and find out what are the things we do agree on. And what are those things? Freedom, liberty, honest elections. And guess what? If you look at the polls, there's a large population from the Democratic side that don't have faith in what took place during the election. That's how we win this. We come together, we find the things that we can agree on, and we win. Here's the thing. My personal opinion, they cheated in the 2020 election. Guess what they're going to do in the 2022 election? They're going to cheat again. That doesn't mean you don't show up to vote. What that means is we show up the way we did in 2016, where they weren't prepared to have the algorithms they came up with weren't big enough to sustain the way we showed up. Guess what? Every single person here, if every single patriot got just one person that's never voted before and took them, it doesn't matter how much they cheat, they could not keep up with those numbers. So, like I said, don't let, perception is very important. It's what, they use to make us look at me a certain way, the way they get you guys to look at anybody a certain way. Look, do the research yourself, use your discernment, and don't lose faith. I'll say it over and over again. We win because God already won this war. We just can't quit.
Absolutely, man. Amen. Amen. Yeah, man. I mean, you hit the nail right in the head. The funny thing when you said the MAGA and the BLMs walking on the bridge in New York, they'll they'll put us in the mandates. They'll put us in the mandate, man. They didn't care, what side of the aisle you were on. They had one mission, and the mission was the mandate. And I mean, look what's happening in the world. Look at Australia. Australia is still on lockdown, and it's because people comply to tyranny. Australia put a ban on every gun that was being sold, and nobody in Australia is armed. They can't even have a pistol. That's how bad it is in Australia, right? And and here, because they can't put that kind of ban, because of our constitution, because of our rights, what they want to do is create chaos. So for those people who own guns to come out in the street, and that's when they, say this is the worst thing that ever happened. This is worse than 9/11, because they're going to continue. January 6th was worse than 9/11. That's what they said. Russia Gate was worse than 9/11. Everything happens is everything worse than 9/11, right? So power propaganda. Um, the issue is it's very deep, and this is a playbook out of China, the Chinese government hand. What are they doing now? They are going after young kids and students. Okay, this is how you mold minds, right? Feed them garbage. Feed them garbage. You don't need to be educated, right? What they do is the way they mold these curriculums that are taught in colleges is it's an indoctrination process. Why do you see all these kids all of a sudden in the street? How many adults is among by adults I mean people over 30 years old, right? All the BLMs, all the Antifas, if they're over 30 or 40 years old, dude, these people are weird. They have you always see like weird hair color, like they're not normal. They're not the blue collared people. These are the people who are still living with their parents, who are like they're homeless or whatever. They're not the ones who are working a 9 to 5 job. They're not the one who actually have a family, because the guy who has a family and could be a left leaning guy is not gonna walk with Antifa. Is not gonna walk with BLM for a protest, right? And when you have this kind of stuff happen, and it's being pushed by the government, because we all saw it. We all saw it 2 years ago when this whole thing broke out. This happens every 4 years, by the way. When there's an election. So we saw it 4 years ago, and the funny thing is, BLM started during Obama. BLM started when Obama was in office, but how long did it last? 3 months. Then they would quiet down. They shut them down because it was making Obama look bad. A black president was being looked bad because BLM was protesting. So they shut him down. And when election was happening for re-election was happening for Trump, they needed something, right? They needed something, and Democrats always say, don't let a crisis go to waste. Don't never let a crisis go to waste. So that's what they use. They use the crisis of George Floyd, and they use that premise to push the agenda. And media was already in line. Mostly peaceful protest with burning buildings in the background and all the stuff, all the looting, all the burning. A really, really, really good friend of mine. He's a neighbor of mine too. He's an FBI agent. He went to Minnesota when they burned it down, and he's a military vet. He's like, Demis, when I went there, I got flashback of Iraq. The burning smell, the structure destroyed, the streets. He's like, this is exactly what happened in Iraq. And this is, let me remind the listeners before we end. Um, remember what ISIS did to the statues in Mesopotamia in Iraq? They destroyed statues. Okay, why do you think they destroyed statues? They wanted to get rid of the evidence of a history that happened, right? Good or bad, doesn't matter. What did BLM and Antifa do? Exactly same thing. Okay. So I had a discussion with a black guy uh, at one of the school board meetings. I was standing outside, and he just butt into my conversation with somebody else, and we didn't agree on anything. So I asked him a question. I say, if I want to take my son to a location where an incident happened, which was historic to the slavery, where do I take him? I said, there's no longer a statue. There's no longer a monument that actually represented slavery and the freedom of the slaves. So guess what? I'm going to tell my son slavery never happened because you guys erased history. You guys don't want it to be shown or displayed. Thank you for erasing history because I will no longer tell my kids slavery happened. And he's like, oh, well, I bet you want to erase it. I'm like, I didn't ask for it. I didn't tell them to tear down the statue. I was fine with the statue. I never once opposed the statue being up. Not once. Actually, it was a good indication of what happened through history, what happened in the timeline of history, of how we progressed from having slaves to freeing them and giving those slaves rights, giving those slaves the right to live, to the right to vote. Yes, it took a long time, but it happened. But what you guys are doing, you're trying to get rid of it, erase it, and start your own. Well, I mean, you're failing big time. So, um, sorry, man, I started rambling.
No, you're the good one, man. I was like, let him go. Send it, baby. Send it. Fire for effect.
You know what I mean? So that's my take of it. And what they're doing now is exactly the same thing. The Democrats, they have the entire propaganda procedure down. They know how to do it. They have the backing of it from the media, from Hollywood, from everybody who's on the tech side. That definitely the big tech is on their side. Hollywood is 100% on their side. The media is 100% on their side. So how do you defeat it? I mean, this is the only way we could defeat that narrative, is informing those who only listen and watch certain things that make them feel better. Well, conservatism is not about feeling good. Conservatism is about feeling right. What is right? What is wrong? What is acceptable? What is not acceptable? Now, the fact that we can agree to disagree with somebody else, that's conservative. Somebody who is conservative can disagree with the opposite side and still be friends and have a smoke or have a drink with them, because the freedom that it's in this country allow us to do that. I could have a disagreement with a family member, but I could still give them a hug and be compassionate with them because they're still the family member. I could do that with a friend because they are still the friend. I don't have to hate them because they have a different ideology. I don't have to hate them because they think a different way. The one thing that bothers me is when you force somebody to live the way they want to live. So I do not enforce the way I live upon anybody else. And I expect the same in return. I don't want to live like somebody else. I want to live my life the way I want to live my life, right? So Ralph Alpha has a way of setting up his desk. I like my desk to be messy, paper all over the place, all this stuff, right? It gets on Alpha's nerves, right? He'll tell me, "Hey, bro, clean up your desk, dude. It's a mess," right? But then to me, he could tell that to me 1,000 times. Doesn't mean like I'm gonna listen to him, right? because this is how I function. I like my desk to be messy. You know, I could turn on to Alpha. Alpha, dude, what the hell, dude? Like your OCD is kicking in. Like put it on neutral, bro. Like throw some papers around on your table. Like make it messy a little bit. It's too clean. It's bothering me, right? But he doesn't have to listen to me either. But then again, like him and I, we could get along. We could have a conversation and go up on our way and be done with it. But the system wanted a division and they created a division, and the division is getting the gap is getting bigger. And it's sad to say. I think one way to bring it back to where it sort of used to be is if another war happens outside of the United States, because I think majority of the Americans hate wars, and they see how destructive it is to our country, to our economy, and they come to that agreement that yes, we should not have this, we should not be doing this, we because during Bush era, I think United States was a lot more united than any time I can remember. And I think when Obama came, that's Obama came and fucked everything up. To be honest with you. And let me be frank, I hated Bush for starting the war in Iraq, and because of the false intel that the Democrats gave him. They wanted to invade Iraq. They Libya, they screwed Libya up and all that stuff. So but I think we could leave that for a different day. Because that could go on for
That's a good
hours, man.
conversation to have when people
Yeah.
start to realize, what do you mean it had to do with central banking? Yeah, you'd be surprised
uh,
when those wars really started.
Alpha, any final thoughts, brother?
Yeah. Real quick, to your audience. One, thanks for giving me the time to hear my story, you guys, and have a conversation with me. Recognize who this enemy really is. And before we get into the evil realm and all that, the CCP, the CCP right now is what is the biggest threat to America. And don't let people confuse you with saying, "Oh, see, the CCP and the Chinese people are two separate things." There's Chinese people that are just waiting for us to bring them the freedom that we have in the Western world. But the CCP is who's controlling us. You look at its ties to Hunter Biden, to Joe Biden, to everybody, all this, and you touched on it earlier, brother. Every time they debunk something, they're using the source of a source of a source. It's always their articles, their opinion pieces. When you go do the research, you realize who it is.
This is the new thing they use. People familiar with the thought, with the thinking.
When I go into these rooms and I find someone who's willing to have some civil discord, I always tell them, okay, show me where you debunked me, and they'll send me an article. And the first thing I do is I scroll to the very bottom of the article to see what they used as their source information, and it'll be a CNN article that's using MSNBC. So I'll go to the MSNBC article, scroll down, and the MSNBC article is using like political. And what I end up finding out is it's a big circle. Everybody's using each other. And I'm just like, yeah, that's not what I call fact checking right there. It's opinion pieces. So, and the other thing too that's really important is don't be discouraged, you guys. I know how things look, but if we come together and we're united, we're going to win this. One of the biggest mistakes that I see Americans making right now is they're waiting for Trump to fall out of the sky with the cape on and come and save us. If that happens, great, you guys, but the probability of it happen, I don't think so.
Happen.
The only way we win this country back is by each and every single one of us getting off the couch and being a part of this movement. You may not like to get behind the camera. You may not like to be someone who writes, but guess what? You may be someone that likes to connect people. Everybody has a skill and everybody has something to contribute to this fight for our freedoms. Figure out what it is, pray on it, and do it. Because if you don't, we'll lose this country. And guess what? A lot of us, I'm 42 years old. I've had a great life. I've experienced a lot of things. It doesn't matter. What they took from me was a piece of metal on my chest and a uniform. They didn't take away what makes me a cop. They didn't take away what I've experienced in life. None of that they can ever take away. They can't take it away from any of you guys. The only people that can allow that to be stripped from you is you. We owe our kids, we owe our grandkids to grow up in the kind of country that we grew up in and better. It's not going to happen unless we do our part. And it may require you to sacrifice something. And as unfortunate as that is, you need to be prepared to do it. Because if you don't, and if you're not, you're just as bad as the people that want to take it away from us. Other than that, it's been an absolute honor to be with you guys, and I hope I'm back. I hope I come back again, brother.
Absolutely, man. Hey, man, you're always welcome here, brother. You're always welcome. Guys, thank you for tuning in. Please don't forget to go to Alpha's page, the Alpha Warrior Show. I will upload this to Rumble as well. Please visit my page on Rumble, Immigrant Corner. And to everybody, God bless you. God bless you, Alpha. For thank you for coming in, man. This was great, and we'll have you back.